to introduce the person that we have today as our speaker, and so I'd like to introduce Bill B.
Okay. My name is Bill, and I am an addict. This is like my least favorite thing to do. I don't like being the center of attention. Thank you. I'd like to ask, this is not normal in a protocol, but I would like to ask if there's anybody in here with less than a year. Cool. Right on.
Candy, I'm at it.
Hi, Candy. Thanks. The reason why I asked that is because I believe that Narcotics Anonymous meetings are for one thing, and it's not a social gathering. It's not. I don't mean to center you guys out, and that's not why I asked that. Because the reason why I said that is because I believe that Narcotics Anonymous meetings are for one thing, and that's to carry the message to the person that's still suffering, and that could be, most of the time it's people that are new, but that really can be someone that has lots of time. So, I'm going to share my experience, strength, and hope, try to. I've been a little bit off kilter today. I don't know why. I've been pretty tired. But I have some coffee, as you can see. I want to welcome anybody that's new and tell you what I heard, and that was that I didn't have to get loaded no matter what, even if I wanted to. I didn't have to. And that creates that has created a lot of controversy in the rooms. That there's a speaker that talks about that, and he talks about that he doesn't like people that say that because he used to use no matter what. And that's why I like to say, that you don't have to get loaded no matter what, even if you want to. When I got here, I didn't want to get loaded. I just wanted the crazies to stop upstairs, and I didn't have any idea what that was going to take to stop that. I didn't know that if I stopped putting chemicals inside of my body, that I would eventually stop creating chaos. And eventually it would slowly taper off and on and on and on. But anyway, so I was 23 when I got here. I'm 52. God willing, Monday I will celebrate 29 years of clean time. That doesn't make me any better than anybody in these rooms. It doesn't make me any better than the new person. I guess what that does, it just gives me a little bit more experience of being clean. So the first time I ever came in was June of 1986. And I didn't stick around. And I bopped in and out. And I didn't get more than, I think it was like 89 days, if I remember right. And so I remember back to when I was 3 years old, and my parents would put a paper bag over my head and blow pot smoke up in it, and I would bounce off the walls, and they thought that was funny. And I didn't know that I was getting loaded at that time. I don't know. The first time that I do know that I got loaded that I acknowledged the fact that I was getting loaded was when I was 5. And my mom asked me to siphon gas out of her car and put it in her sister's car, my aunt, because she wouldn't make it home. And I got loaded in the process of doing that. And I felt funny. It was a different kind of feeling. And I was concerned about it, and I went to my mom and said, "Mom, I feel funny." And she said, "What happened?" And I said, "Well, I did what you told me to do, and I felt funny after the fact." And she said, "Well, you probably got loaded." And I remember hearing that word like it was an evil word. Because what I was raised around and what I saw, I really wanted nothing to do with getting loaded. So it scared the shit out of me. And that was the first acknowledgement of what drugs could do to me. And I dabbed around with that. I remember them doing the smoking the pot and drinking and way more stuff. But what I started doing was stealing roaches out of the ashtray and stuff off of the piles that were on the table. I really don't like talking about specifics because I don't want to make anybody that's new Jones. We all know what we did out there, and so I really don't like glorifying what I did, but to tell my story I got to talk a little bit, and I try to make it as brief as possible, because it says in what is the Narcotics Anonymous program, we're not interested in what you did, and that's why it says that, because we don't want to make people Jones on it, or think too heavy into old thoughts. And so I started taking bottles and glasses and stuff that still had stuff in it off of the tables, and I became a bartender, basically what I did, and emptying ashtrays and taking the roaches out, and then that's where it all really started for me, on my own doing. And the first time that I ever lost control of my body I was 9 years old, and what I mean by that is I woke up passed out from being passed out with alcohol, and I was face down in my vomit, and I remember my mom waking me up by grabbing me from the back of my head and slapping me, saying, "Wake up, wake up," and I had top ramen hanging out of my nose because I threw up, and she said, "You stupid little bastard, you could have died, laying in your vomit," and that scared the shit out of me when I woke up the next morning. But she heard me gurgling into my own vomit and laying face down in the bed, and the next morning it scared the shit out of me that I could end up just like they were. And I remember at the age of 5 saying that I didn't want anything to do with drugs, I didn't want anything to do with crime, and I didn't want anything to do with marriage, because it was all fucked up. It was all extremely messed up, what was around me. I was raised around criminals and prostitution. The men robbed banks and pharmacies, and the women sold themselves to supply the habit. And my dad was a pimp, and his wife, he wasn't married. He was never married to my mom, and I'll get more into that. he was married to the madam of the operation, and she was very powerful. She was basically Heidi Fleiss, but just never got busted. My mom had 3 kids, and I was the middle child, and I always knew that I was different than my sisters. We all had separate dads, and I was told that my dad was my sister's dad, and we looked totally different, and I didn't look anything like Wayne, and I knew something was different. And at the age of I think like 7 or 8, I found out that he wasn't my dad, and found out that Dan was my dad. And I remember thinking as clear as, man, like it was yesterday, that cool, this fuckhead is not my dad. This guy is my dad, and maybe I got a chance to having a real dad. And maybe I'll have a chance of getting what I never got. You know, and that's just normal shit, you know, discipline, structure, food in the house, love, compassion. And Dan turned out to be worse than Wayne in a lot of ways. He never acknowledged me. One time I asked him if he was my dad, and he said yeah. But he never acknowledged me with any of his friends or his crime partners or business partners, anything. When we were together, he never introduced me as his son. And that kind of fucked me up even more. So I found out that he was my dad over a kind of a fucked up dope deal. My mom was, like I said, she was into prostitution, and she was also into having a lot of sugar daddies, and one of these guys was terminally ill. And back then, there was a drug that is very popular today. I cannot believe that it's so randomly available, and that's Dilaudid. And Dilaudid was only prescribed to terminally ill people back then. And this one particular dude, he was ill, and he had, you know, he, like the book says, he had a lot of doctors. He was chasing doctors, and he even had one in California. My mom was dealing those. And my stepdad's sister was getting dope from my mom, and she was all fronted out, and I remember Jeanette coming to me and telling me the whole story about my real dad. And basically she told my mom that if she didn't front her more dope, that she was going to tell me the real story about my dad. And that's how I found out who my real dad was. And you know, I was raised around a lot of bad shit, and a lot of bad stuff happened to me. You know, from when I was 8 years old, I caught a rock off of the Selwood Bridge with my face, and it almost killed me. And a mentally challenged kid threw a rock the size of a dinner plate off of the bridge, and I was down by the river, and he screamed when he dropped it, thinking that I would look up and get it in the face, and I didn't hear him. And the lady that was cleaning her deck on her boathouse that was launched there, they used to be moored there, but in '96 they washed down the river. But anyway, she heard him scream at me, and she was yelling and looking at me, looking up and yelling, and I heard her yelling and saw her looking up, and I looked up and got it. And it broke my skull. I have a scar right here from it. I have a scar that goes through my eyebrow and down the side of my nose and across my nose. It broke my jaw, it broke my cheekbones. It knocked this eyeball that way. This one was going straight, this one was going that way. And the reason why I'm telling this is because I was in the hospital for 9 months in a cast from here straight up, and it messed my neck up, and I was on morphine for a very long time, and I was basically hooked on it. I was addicted to it, and when I got out of the hospital, I had quite the habit, and I remember chasing shit to fix that, and that was like at the age of 7 and 8, so that was like one of the things that happened to me. But the moral of the story is that I was raised around all this fucked up stuff and all this bad stuff that happened to me, and I tried to fix that with drugs, and none of it worked. And in the process of doing that, I created a lot of more wreckage. Like I stole from my grandmother, and my grandma knew that it was me, and I said, and I denied it. She confronted me, and I denied it. And when my dad came over, and I knew that I was in trouble, my real dad, and he whooped the shit out of me for it. He knew. And but see, I knew too. And my grandma was like the only rock in my life, solid rock. Her couch was always available, man. I could always land at her place and have a meal, and have some love, some compassion, and what I lacked always in every other area. So like my mom, we went camping one time. Well, we went camping one time, and this one dude showed up. Her house was the flop house. She rented this duplex in Gresham, and she sold out of one, and we lived in the other one, and we had this hole in the wall that we went from apartment to apartment. And when the cops showed up, and if they caught us in there with the dope, they told us to kick it on the floor or take a ticket back, I think it was like 75, 73. She was selling to Gresham High School, and but if we got away from the cops, we went through the wall and went into the apartment next door, and they never fucking caught on to that. But one time we went camping. The reason why I started telling you about the apartment was that the dope house had a lot of flops there. A lot of guys flopped there, and everybody had a role, man, to keep the house functionable. Like one guy robbed garages. He robbed freezers out of garages. That was his thing. He was really good at it, and we always had meat, always, because he was getting into freezers. And another dude siphoned gas, and another dude shoplift alcohol and cigarettes, and on and on and on. But so anyway, everybody gets together and goes camping. My mom forgot me at the campground. Left me there for 2 fucking weeks. I had to pack everything up and hitchhike home. And, stuff happened. And it's no reason why I turned out fucked up as I did. So, I'm going to fast forward now to when I got clean. Actually, one more thing. I went to McLaren in 1980. And was there for 4 years. Got out in 1984, right before I turned 18. And there's a guy by the name of Nicky Cruz. I don't know how many of you guys know who he is, but man, he played a hell of a role on planting the seed in me. He came to McLaren, and he told a story, and he wasn't representing any program. He wasn't there for Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, or no A's involved in his speech. But what he did was he told a story, and basically what he was saying was that you didn't have to commit crime anymore. That there's a different way to live. And I heard that, man, for the first time, and it rocked my world. I just could not believe that there was a different way to live than what I was living. And so that was in, I want to say 82, 83. I think it was 82. So I get out in 1984. I'm 18. And I do one more crime, and I get caught. And I decide that I'm done. I ain't doing no more crime. I started buying and selling cars. A lot of people don't know this, but it's really fucked up part about my story is that I started going to high school. Not this part, but I didn't know how to read or write when I got clean. I was, like I said, I was 23 when I got clean. And I started going to high school. It was mandatory, my probation, my parole actually, out of McLaren. So I started going to high school, and it turned out that I didn't want no part of education. It was just a connection, but I hooked up with my school bus driver. She was twice my age, and she turned out to be exactly like what my mom was doing. She was she was basically my sugar mama. And, she had 4 kids. She was newly divorced. She got alimony and child support, and she was loaded. And she was driving bus. And I was hooked. Hook, line, and sinker. It was on. And, it was really fucked up. I stayed with her for 5 years. I left. We were sitting at the URS club. I had 1 month clean. We were sitting at the URS club, which I don't know, a lot of you know, United Recovery Services, what URS stands for. And it was a clean and sober club, kind of like this, but way bigger. And there was dances and all sorts of shit. It was definitely the place to be, man, getting clean. So we were looking at each other, and we went, man, this is really fucked up. This is dysfunction junction. And I never saw her again. She walked out, and it was a mutual thing, and I never went home, and went back and moved in with my mom and took over my room that she turned into a shooting gallery, and speaking of my mom's got a year more than I do. I detoxed her in a relapse, and she come to me and said, Bill, I know you've been going to those meetings, and I really want to get clean. I'm tired of doing this shit. And she'd been doing it for a long time, and she was still doing exactly what she was doing. And I said, okay, how do you want to do this? And I said, she goes, you've been around, So part of that detox was heroin takes a lot of the vitamin C and sugar out of your system, tar heroin. And that's the way that they detox people, man. I remember trying to wake up a lot of dead people on my couch for my mom and dad detox, and they ran this little business that, you better hope you survive this one, but come on over and pay us and we'll take care of you. And so I even tried waking up my uncle dead in my sister's bed when I was 9. So anyway, she comes to me and she says, I want to get clean. And I said, okay, let's do this. And first I said, you're crazy. You coming to me, I'm the wrong person. I haven't been staying clean. And she goes, I know, but you've been around long enough to know. So I said, okay, how do you want to do this? She said, let's cut the dosages. So you can cut dosages, you can go cold turkey, or you can go to treatment. And back then they had long-term treatment that they kept you loaded for a long time, and the detox wasn't that bad. And she said, let's cut the dosages for a week, and I'll go into treatment after that. And 2 days into, so I went and copped and split it up into 8 days, and she said, no matter, you know what this is gonna do to me, and you know how I'm gonna be acting. And she goes, no matter how bad I beg and claw at you, do not give me more than one a day. And that's what happened. She was begging hard, and I couldn't watch my mom do it. And mind that I'm in a relapse, you know, that I ain't staying clean. And she goes, give me more, you know, and I'm like, no. And anyway, 2 days into it, I can't do it. And she had a 90, and that was it. I took her keys, I took her money, I took her clothes, I took everything that she couldn't leave the house and cop more. I took her phone. Well, I unplugged the phone out of the house. We didn't have cell phones back then. Can I get a tissue, please? A napkin. Thank you. She's clawing at me, wanting to, you know, and I said, I can't do this. You need to get professional help. And 2 days later, she calls me and she's in treatment. It's funny because I did the rest of her dope. I didn't give that back to her. I gave her keys and left the house. And she did the exact same thing for me almost a year later. And we've been clean since. I was talking to Vicky. Vicky's my road dog, man. I've known Vicky for 27 years, I think. We can't remember. We're too fucking old. Yeah, 4/23 of '89 is my clean date. We were talking today. I cannot believe that it's been that long. I can't believe it's been 29 years. A lot of things happened in 29 years. A lot of no matter what's is the way I like to say it. You know, life happens. Life happens to everything, everybody, no matter. You know, if you don't, if you're not put in a box, it's going to happen. A lot of no matter what's have happened to me. A few things that really ring my bell, really stick out, and the reason why I want to say this is because, like I said earlier, is that I don't have to get loaded no matter what, even if I want to. I don't have to. 4/22 of 1989, I'm in an AA meeting at the URS Club, hole in the wall group, 5:30 meeting. At the end of that meeting, I walk out of there, and imagine this room cut in half, and the meeting being in this side, and the lounge. It was basically a dry bar is what it was, and the lounge is on this side, and it's got a carpet wall that folds up that separates these two rooms. And I come out of that meeting, and I sit up against, you know, on a table, and I'm sitting up against that carpeted wall, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just feeling absolutely hopeless, and I'll get into that why. So remember I said I couldn't read or write when I got here. And I'm going to AA. I don't know anything about NA. And I'm going to AA, and they're talking these big words like hope, like serenity, like surrender. Man, nothing's computing. You know, I don't know this language, so I'm not getting fed. I'm not getting any medicine. And I walk out of that meeting completely, utterly fucking hopeless. And I'm sitting at that table, and I'm thinking, I'm going to die. I'm going to die from this disease. It's going to kick my ass, and it's going to kill me. And this old man sits at the table. This is a part that I'm going to do something else out of protocol. How many people got multiple years? So, Chicago John. I don't know if that name rings a bell. Chicago John was around, he was probably 16 years clean at this time. He was an old timer. There wasn't a lot of big digits back then. But this is AA. And he came up to me and he goes, "What is your fucking problem, kid?" And I went, "Who the fuck are you?" And he sat down at the table. And I kind of had a thought of, get the fuck away from me. But then I just, I surrendered. I had no more fight in me. And I told the guy, man, it was the first time that anything came out of my mouth without a hustle. I wasn't trying to con this guy out of anything. I didn't want anything from him. And I said, I think I'm going to die. And two more guys joined, Boxcar Leonard and Ernie. Back then, the anonymity thing was very skewed. A lot of people thought that it had to do with your last name, and it really doesn't. Anonymity has everything to do with, if there was a wreck right out here on this corner right now, and I went running out there and said, I saw everything happen. My name's Bill Brown, and I was in a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm here with Vicki Beckel. I don't do that. I don't blow her anonymity. I don't give her last name. I can give my last name. My last name's Brown. I don't care. If something happens to me, how the hell are you going to come and see me in the hospital? And so, anyway, saying that, everybody had nicknames. I was Silent Bill. I was Tall Bill. I was Long-Haired Bill. Everybody had nicknames. There was Baseball Bat Bob. There was Maniac Bob. There was lots of names, right? And the reason why is because we thought that what I just explained. So anyway, Chicago John. He was from Chicago. He just got out of prison from doing a double life sentence. He killed a guy. He was a boxer. He was a Golden Glove boxer, and he had a boxing. He still has it. He's dead. His son has it now. His son runs it. Mount Tabor Boxing Arena. But that old man saved my life. Absolutely. He sat down, man, and he gave me freely what was given to him. And Boxcar Leonard, his story started here in Salem. He rode the cars. That's why his name was Boxcar. He thought that he was in Salem, Massachusetts when he got off the train. But see, the reason why he thought that is because he was fucking drinking Sterno off of the train that was leaking out of the car that was leaking. And if you don't know what Sterno is the shit that you put underneath food to heat it up, that little can. It's very flammable. It's very toxic. And if you do not sift it in one way or another, you will die. It will fucking kill you. I mean, it's going to kill you anyway, but it will kill you real quick if you don't. So part of his story was, God, I love that old man. He's dead. He's been dead a long time, and he's still, man, it's like he's sitting right here with me. He ain't dead. He lives every day with me, every day. He was the guy that started the Sit Down, Shut Up, and Listen meeting. It was SSAL meeting in Portland. I don't even know if it's still going. It's an AA meeting. But those guys sat there and talked to me for that was at 6:30 when they came and sat down right after that meeting, and they talked to me until the acceptance group at 10 o'clock at the URS club started, and they told me about Narcotics Anonymous. But anyway, Boxcar Leonard, I like telling his story. He used to say, sit down, shut up, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth, because what you know got you right where you're at. And if you ain't seen where you're at, you're pretty fucked up. So why don't you listen? And I learned, man. I learned real quick because I was tired of being where I was at. And I listened. I listened and I listened and I listened. And what goes along with listening is watching. And what he said, if you watch long enough, you'll see the fucking people that you don't want to hang out with. Because there are people here that do stupid shit. And it has nothing to do with the program. It has everything to do with the fellowship. Totally different. This back here, and this is obviously another program, but this right here is perfect. It works just fucking great. It works perfect, man. So the information, so Boxcar Leonard, I don't know how much time I got. I think not very much. But anyway, Boxcar Leonard, part of his story was that he was on the train and they all noticed that one was leaking, and they figured out that it was sterno, and they knew that if they strained it, they could drink it. So what they did was they all got together with themselves. There was about 5 of them. And they got together with themselves on that train, and they realized who was wearing socks the least amount of time. And it was Leonard. He was wearing his socks for 25 days. And they strained that sterno with his socks, and they drank it. That's the disease right there at its finest. And I qualify, I can relate to that. So, okay, back to back to Chicago John. Chicago John gave me the best information that I ever received in this program, and that was that I needed to stop blaming the world around me, and I needed to start owning the shit that I was doing, because the shit that I was doing got me right where I was at. And when I took a look at that, that's when stuff started changing, because when I took a look at it, not only did I see the problem, but I saw the solution along with that problem. And then that problem stopped happening. And the first problem was that I stopped putting chemicals in my body. And so back in the program, they used to talk about being pickled. And what that meant is that you can take a pickle or a cucumber and turn it into a pickle, but you can't take a pickle and turn it back into a cucumber. And what that means was that I did the shit out there long enough to realize, or to do a lot of damage. And I was really close. I was probably this close, even closer, from not being able to go back and become a productive member of society. Not really that I was ever one. So I couldn't read and write when I got here. I could not get into this book. I could not do this. I couldn't do the steps. And I had 2.5 years clean, and I was batshit crazy. And I just followed suggestions, man. That's all I did. Was I acted as if. I just did what everybody else was doing, and my life started changing just by that alone. But the inside stuff was crazy. I was batshit crazy, and I couldn't stop the voices, and that's really all I wanted. I didn't want the car, I didn't want the house, I didn't want the wife, I didn't want none of that shit. I just wanted the batshit crazies to stop going on upstairs. And that's when I got into doing the steps, and this lady in Alcoholics Anonymous, she told me that she would do the steps with me on cassette tape. And she sat down with me and explained in detail what the steps meant. And if I didn't understand something she said, stop her and ask her what that meant, and she would explain what that meant. And it took days to do this, and I did it. And it put a fire under my ass to where I wanted to learn how to read and I wanted to learn how to write. And I found this little speak and spell thing. It was a little machine that looked like a big calculator that had tons of keys on it, and it really overwhelmed me, but I stuck with it and stuck with it and stuck with it. And it taught me how to read, and it taught me how to spell. And it changed my life. That lady sitting down with me, you know, they say in the program, you know, there's a lot of shit that's said, and this is just my opinion. It's not in the book, what I'm about to say. They say men stick with men and women stick with women, and I think that is such a fucking crock of shit. I can call up. I was raised by my mom, man. I was raised by two other sisters. I can relate to a woman way better than I can a man. Men have egos and they don't like hearing a bunch of mushy shit, and I really don't give a fuck. I cry. I hug people. I get sad. On and on and on. I don't really give a shit. But I can call Vicky and I could say, I'm really fucked up, and she'll go, well, what's that look like? And I'll bloop. Not that I can't do that with a guy. I got lots of guy friends and I can do that. But the message that you shouldn't work the steps with women or the opposite sex, that's really fucked up, man. The steps saved my life, and it doesn't matter how I do them. It doesn't matter. No, I won't say that. I don't this is me personally, my opinion. I don't give a fuck what A it is. If it's Alcoholics Anonymous, if it's Overeaters Anonymous, I don't give a shit. If I got a fucking problem, I'm going to work it out. I'm sitting here speaking at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and there's AA literature all around me. This is being recorded right now, I can tell, and it's being covered up by a brochure, Alcoholics Anonymous brochure. So, if you got a problem, and alcohol is a drug.
Fixed it.
I can still see the A. I want to say this, and saying that explaining part of my story about not being able to read or write, and the person sitting down with me with a cassette tape, that kind of dates myself too. But I've come up with a system that if you can't read or write and you are struggling, come and talk to me. I'll do the same thing with you. And there's no shame in that game at all, because the steps saved my life, and I don't think I'd be here. I really don't think I'd be here if that lady Dottie didn't approach me and say, I can see you're fucked up, and I can see that you got to change, and this is how we can do it. And I went, okay. I'm going to read this. Does anybody here don't have a book? This is a 3rd edition. This is an old book. This is part of my... Here, give me a hug. So part of my thing that I like doing, I created a little hobby for myself, and I like going into secondhand stores, and I like looking for self-help literatures. There's a fucking Band-Aid stuck to that thing. Isn't that funny? So I like grabbing literature, man, and I find some really cool old books, and there's a lot of cool readings in that, personal stuff that people have wrote, so it's kind of cool. But I like... So when I got clean, the 3rd edition was out, and I think there's 6 now.
6 editions.
Yeah, 6 editions. Exactly. So I want to read this, and I love reading this. This is not in the new edition. That's the reason why I brought that up. This part right here. It's an Indian Without a Tribe is the chapter, and My favorite chapter is More Will Be Revealed. Because what I know is that if I don't pick up and get loaded, more will be revealed. It will happen. So I will always be grateful to NA for taking me from the depths of my addiction and giving me life. A life that is full of love and true concern for others. That's a blessing, man, that I can have that. I'm new to the area. I'm about 5 months living here in Salem. I moved from a little town called Canby, right next to Portland. And, I've been trying to reach out and give myself the opportunity to meet new people and stuff like that. And it's been a struggle, man. It's really been hard. I've never done it in my clean time. So one of the things I did was blasted on social media is that I want to become a better member of my community, and I would like to offer my assistance if anybody needs help. If a elderly woman or someone that's sick or whatever, to go get them groceries or mow their lawn or take them to a doctor's appointment or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. I want to freely give myself, because that's what someone did to me. 3 old men sat down at the table, and it wasn't about recovery then. It was about get me out of here and seeing, so I could see the real shit that's going on. And it really has nothing to do with drugs. It has everything to do with I'm not as fucked up as I think I am. I'm not. These are feelings that I never thought could be possible for me, as long as I take it easy and make a commitment with a higher power to do the best that I can. I know I will be taken care of today. I have come to believe in miracles, for I am one. Can't be said any better, man. I know that I'm a miracle today because I see the death around me every day. I see it all the time. So, if you're new here or old, give yourself a break and try something different, because what I learned was that what I was doing wasn't working, and I needed to do something different, and that was Narcotics Anonymous. Thanks.
My name's